Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to my collective worship. It's January the 25th. It's Cycle B, and it's the third Sunday in Ordinary Time. So the liturgical colour is green. January the 25th, everyone, is a very special day for me. Not only is it Burns Night, and not only is it the birthday of a man called David Ginola, who's one of my favourite Newcastle United players ever. It's also my birthday, and it's a big birthday today. So today I am no longer in my 30s, and that's why I'm going to be retiring at the end of this year. So yes, everyone, you've guessed it, today Mr. O'Brien is 40, and if you believe that, you will believe anything. Today the theme is Marvellous Someone and the Fisherman. We're going to be talking about the good news. The Bible is made up of the Old Testament and the New Testament. There are 4 books in the New Testament which we call the Gospels. Gospel means good news, and each of the 4 Gospels tells us about the good news of Jesus. Now, they were written by 4 different writers, and I'm sure lots of us will remember that those writers were called Matthew, Mark, Luke and John. Well, we are going to be looking at one of those Gospels over the next 3 weeks. But which one? There are the names. Well, I'm going to give you some clues. I'm going to give you some letters. The first one, take the first letter of the name of the mother of Jesus. Then in the Old Testament, take the first letter of the first person that God created. The third letter, where did John baptize Jesus and people? And the fourth letter, what was Herod's title? Herod was the man who told the wise men to tell him when they had found Jesus. So, I hope you've worked out that Jesus' mother is Mary, so that's M. The first person created by God was Adam, so that's A. John baptized people in the river Jordan, so for river. And Herod was the king, so it's K, kicking K. So M-A-R-K, Mark is the gospel that we're going to focus on. Now here's Mark, and we're going to ask him some questions, and we're going to find some things out about Mark. So Mark, could you introduce yourself, please?
Hello everyone, my name is Mark. I wrote the Gospel of Mark that you'll find in every Bible all over the world. Hello everyone.
That's pretty impressive.
How could I not? Just like you, I didn't actually get to meet Jesus, but my good friend Simon Peter, you know him? He was one of Jesus' best friends, one of his closest disciples. Simon Peter told me everything that happened, and I wrote it down so everyone could hear the gospel, the good news.
Who did you want to read your book?
That's a great question. Have you heard of Matthew? He wrote one of the other Gospels and was writing his about the same time as I wrote mine. Well, his book was written for the Jews, who understood all sorts of religious jargon and stuff about the temple. But when I heard about the good news of Jesus, I thought to myself, that's good news for everyone, not just the Jews. So I wrote my Gospel so everyone could understand it. Romans, Jews, non-religious people, everyone.
That's absolutely great, Mark. Thank you for that. Can you tell us a little story about Jesus now, please?
Absolutely. But I don't have a lot of time. Things to do, you know, so I'd better keep it brief. One day, Andrew and Simon were fishing on the Sea of Galilee. That's what they did every day. Fish. They were just throwing out their nets like they did every day when Jesus wanders up and says, "Come after me, and I will make you fishers of men." I mean, what? Imagine how shocked Simon and Andrew would have been. But there must have been something very convincing about Jesus, as they immediately abandoned their nets and followed him. Did you hear that? They left their nets. That means they left their work, their way of making money. And do you know what happened next? Jesus did exactly the same thing with the brothers James and John. They left their nets too and followed Jesus. How's that for a story? Tells you that Jesus was something pretty special, right? But what I love about that story, especially as I didn't get to meet Jesus in person, is just like Jesus called Simon, Andrew, James and John, he calls me and you to follow him too. How great is that?
That's pretty great. Thank you for telling us that story, Mark.
Not a problem. Anyway, I better go now. Things to do, people to tell about Jesus. I'll see you soon.
So, what does the word gospel mean? I hope you can remember from what we've said earlier that it means good news. It comes from two words. God means good, spell, news. God spell, contracted to gospel, good news. Who did Mark hear about Jesus from? Well, I hope you remember from our story that he heard that from Simon Peter. Why was Mark so surprised that Jesus called Simon, Andrew, James and John to follow him? Well, Mark was surprised because he thought Jesus would call people who were more special. These were just ordinary, uneducated fishermen, and really, Mark didn't really understand that at first. There's a picture of a boat. John personally called Simon, Andrew, James and John, who were fishermen, to follow him. Jesus calls us personally to follow him too. Simon, Andrew, James and John were not particularly special people. They were just ordinary fishermen. But Jesus called them, and he calls us too. When Jesus called Simon, Andrew, James and John, he saw them fishing. Jesus had important work for them to do, and he said they could be fishers of men rather than fishers of fish. Jesus has important work for us to do too, and we need to remember this. He wants us to love God, to love others, and to share the good news. The disciples were so excited about what Jesus had said to them that they left their nets, their work, their livelihood behind them, and they followed Jesus. If Jesus stood in front of you now and said, "Come and follow me," what would you say? What would you do? The disciples left their work behind to follow Jesus. We can't physically walk after Jesus today, but he still calls us to follow him. He asks us to love God, love others, and share his good news. Do you have anything that you need to leave behind that stops you following Jesus' call or God's call for your life? Why don't we ask God to help us to follow him now? Dear Jesus, thank you for the good news that Mark writes about you. Help us to leave behind anything that stops us following your call for our lives. Help us every day to follow you as quickly and enthusiastically as Simon, Andrew, James and John. Amen. So think about the good news. What do you do to spread the good news? How do you treat your parents, your family, your friends? Here's our big question for this week. How do we share the good news from God? Notice the word God means any God, whatever name you give to your God. How do we share the good news from God? Marvelous Mark and the fisherman. Have a good week, everybody. Goodbye.